If you suddenly became the President of the United States today, what's the very first thing you'd change or do? Story 1. First thing, I'd make Election Day a national holiday. If voting's the heart of democracy, why are we forcing people to choose between their job and their voice? Let's start there. Story 2. I would require Congress and Senate members to wear jackets like a NASCAR driver. Any donation you receive must be displayed on the jacket, so we will know that you are backed by big oil, pharma, etc. Story 3. I will be modeling my presidency after that of President Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho. As in, recognize I am likely not qualified for the job, and thus will seek to fill my cabinet with the top experts in each field to guide my decisions. And we will water the crops with Brondo, because it's got electrolytes, which I'm told is what plants crave. Story 4. Clean house. Anyone who is making money off their position from stocks, bribes, or other means is out. Lobbyists, adios. Get the money out of politics. It's for the people, not for the paychecks. Story 5. Change campaign finance. Only people who are registered to vote may make any financial contributions to any candidate or PAC, maximum contribution 10K index linked. Story 6. A lot of people are saying things that unfortunately seems possible because of the current president's actions and use of power, not aren't within the presidency, so the first thing I would do is work with Congress to create laws to rescind tons of the power that has been moved to the executive that the founders never wanted to be there. I would do that by specifically threatening tons of actions that are now legal under the executive that shouldn't be, that they specifically wouldn't like, unless they rescinded it along with a joint executive order of the president giving up those powers. Story 7. Quit because I am stressed about starting a new job as a barista after not being a barista for a decade. I would panic if I had international politics to deal with tomorrow. Story 8. Very first, fire the entire cabinet and their immediate subordinates effective immediately while ordering someone I actually trust to ensure all of them leave with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Personal effects, computers, cell phones can be sent later after they're swept for any confidential information. Story 9. ID launch a national mental health and civics education initiative. We need more resources for mental health support that are actually accessible, and we need to teach people how to have constructive conversations again, speaking from a very personal narrative. Story 10. Remove for-profits healthcare in the USA, universal healthcare. No need anymore for health insurance. No more bankruptcies because you got hurt. No more, I can't quit my job because I need the health insurance from work. Your biggest expense when you get hurt should be parking your car at the hospital. That's it. Story 11. Love how the person asked what people would do as president, and so many are saying they would do things that require an act of Congress to accomplish, so you become an authoritarian dictator on day one by imposing your will on the people without input from Congress. Interesting, where are we currently seeing this happening? Story 12. What rules am I playing under and what's the context? Do I have the Senate or House? Have I packed the courts or will they be an issue? If I became temporary emperor the Joser, eliminate Citizens United, transparency into political donations, no dark money and donation limits. Even if money is free speech, stupid and protected just like voting, we still only get one vote. Institute term limits in the Supreme Court, ban elected officials from owning securities other than index funds or treasury instruments. Possible exceptions for private assets owned prior to becoming an elected official. Term limits for Congress. Campaigns can only be paid for out of a pot of public money set aside for qualified candidates. To become a qualified candidate you must pass a civics test, collect a certain number of signatures, present a well-sourced and argued platform. Campaign season starts 3 months before Election Day. No spending prior to that. Major increases in funding for mental health, single-payer healthcare. That single-payer is the federal government. The profit motive in the decision to allow more deny care. Revamp HIPAA to catch up to the 21st century and eliminate some of the crushing requirements. Implement AI-driven permitting across state, local and federal processes. Launch mandatory review of all existing permit requirements, including environmental regs. Even the first proponents of environmental permitting and reviews agree that these are way out of control and don't match up with original intent. Prioritize the creation of AI laws and regulations. Increase the tax rate on top earners. Create a mandatory national standard for electronic health records and set a deadline for adoption. Anyone not meeting the deadline will be ineligible for certain government funds. Implement mandatory transparency in coverage of care denials. Every claim can be elevated to some kind of arbitration process, but the arguments are conducted on a streaming platform, so the denier has to face the patient and actually speak their words and arguments in public. We'd do a lot fewer shitty things if we still paid a social cost for being a. That just about does it for day one. Fly to Washington, D.C. on Air Force One and head straight for the White House. Story 13. Get rid of all the fools he appointed and appoint professional, experienced people who actually have knowledge in whatever the post calls for. Fox host as SEC Def, wrestling promoter for SEC of Ed, so freaking ridiculous, appointed by a clown. Story 14. Age limits for politicians. After 65, yearly mental and cognitive testing. At 70 years old you're out, so the oldest you can be to run for president is 66. Story 15. Fire the entire cabinet. Appoint Pete Buttigieg as my VP and have him pretty much run things for me. Launch investigations into the previous administration. Reset the guardrails to democracy that have been dismantled. Push for tax reform where everyone pays their fair share. Strengthen social programs like Social Security and Medicare/Medicaid. Push for universal health care, which would make those other two programs irrelevant. Try to mend foreign relations that have been broken. Story 16. Bring high-speed rail and more trains to the U.S. regardless of what state government says, since our train infrastructure is lacking quite a bit compared to Europe and Asia. Story 17. First thing, jail Donald Trump. Second thing, remove all super PACs and set limits regulations on campaign contributions. Third thing, make it illegal for any member of Congress to own or trade stocks. Fourth thing, make Election Day a national holiday and give tax credits to those who vote and penalties to those who don't. Doing these three things would likely fix a lot of problems immediately. Story 18. Executive order tying federal educational funding to a robust civics education in high school, on account of how many people in this post are disturbingly ignorant of what the president can actually do. Story 19. People here are wildly overestimating the power of the presidency. Most problems we face today are the results of legislation or court orders. Reasonably, you could expect to have the power to do things like denationalize the California National Guard and order a decrease in IC operations, but not much else. Grander things like campaign finance limits, restore Roe v. Wade, and end global conflict would require the cooperation of the courts, Congress, or foreign nations, who don't know who you are, what your endgame is, and whether they support you or not. The most likely thing to unite these people will probably be the articles of impeachment against you for magically usurping the presidency. On the bright side though, you should have time to joyride in Air Force One a couple times. Story 20. I've thought about this one a lot. I'd immediately start doing my job, and only my job, that is, I will faithfully execute the laws Congress passes. I won't give an opinion on laws, or propose them. I would only use executive orders to rescind old ones, or to direct agencies on how to interpret provisions after consulting the authors of those provisions. Finally, I would resurrect the Roosevelt fireside chats in podcast form. I'd spend time every week talking about foreign affairs, insight into agencies, and excoriating Congress for not working together and passing laws. Basically, no more free pass for the legislative branch to shrug their responsibilities. Story 21. We'd legal days off of the year for things like voting, taxes, and a set of required days for mental health. Pull out of the Middle East completely, including any funding towards any country over there, and force removal for hiring on diversity. Any discrimination is still discrimination whether or not you're hiring them for their race or against it. Story 22. Lobby Congress for a set of amendments. 1. Age limits that complement and set an upper age limit to match the lower age limit for elected positions. 1A. Appointed positions have a mandatory retirement age to match the corresponding confirmation body. Senate confirmed positions, for example, retire at the upper age limit of senators, i.e. Cabinet and Supreme Court. 2. Ban direct trading of stocks and bonds and make insider trading illegal for all federal office holders. Regulatory bodies may not directly hold stocks in industries they regulate. 3. All campaign funding for politicians can only come from named U.S. citizens. No foreign money, no PACs, no corporations, no other organizations may directly contribute. They can only encourage citizens to contribute. Likewise, within 3 months of an election, companies do not have a right of free speech. Only people. 4. Updated ERA 5. Guarantee of federal-funded healthcare for all Americans. 6. Requirement for all companies operating within the U.S. with more than 100 employees or contractors must include employee representatives on the board if directors, and include employee profit sharing of at least 25% of all annual profits. Employees must be allowed to vote to appoint company officers and to remove company officers. It's amazing democracy does not extend into the workplace. Story 23. Ban fire any Trump family members or associates from serving any government office due to financial complicity. Start a team of auditors to track the real spending shenanigans and claw the funds back to be distributed to those in need. Story 24. 1. Designate voting day as a national holiday. 2. Ranked choice voting. 3. Corporation PAC campaign donations to public officials must be public knowledge. 4. Establish Internet Bill of Rights. 5. Establish universal healthcare. 6. 2-year colleges free including trade school. 7. Protect our national forests and wildlife refuge. 8. Corporation tax cuts. If a corporation must request a tax cut, but only if 70 of their workforce is based in the U.S., primarily white-collar jobs, IT, call center, app dev, etc. 9. Fund public education. 10. Immigration reform. When an immigrant shows up to our boards, they will be processed, with background checks, and completing the required paperwork. If they are found guilty of a heinous crime, they will do the time in prison and will deported after their prison release. 11. Women will have their own rights over their bodies without government interference. There are a ton more I would do if I was president, but my lunch is almost over. Story 25. Take advantage of the recent SCOTUS ruling to remove GOP opposition, allowing my second action to be expansion of the Supreme Court, paving the way for the third action to be the huge massive overhaul of the federal government in favor of everyday people. Tax the rich, abortion legal, trans rights, reforms on presidential power, term limits for everyone, universal healthcare. Huge military spending cuts. Story 26. Reverse every EO since January 20th. Fire every federal LEO participating in illegal deportations for failing to uphold their oath. Clear the federal government of any Trump appointee and anyone who worked for Doge. Story 27 Voting Day Federal Holiday. Destroy the idiotic bill currently making the rounds because it sells, among other things, millions of acres of public land. Strip IC of all of its. Get the best IT team I can in to see what the Doge has done and wipe it out or reverse it. Then enshrine the ERA and abortion rights into the Constitution. Story 28 An impossible choice. Election Day National Holiday. No electronic vote tabulation. All by hand, publicly funded campaigns only. Overturn the corporations' united ruling. End all support to Israel. Name AIPAC as a terrorist organization. Cut the military budget in half, enabling free college and healthcare. Story 29 We have a minimum age for elect officials. Guess what? There's now a maximum age of 65. Next up are outlawing stock trading by elected officials, throwing them off their healthcare plan, and the salary for life thing, ending Citizens United. Cutting at least a third of the military budget and redirecting it towards education and infrastructure. I'm aware the president can't just wave his hand and make all that happen. I would just say they are official actions though and tell the SC to all the way off. A benevolent, all-powerful president could change our future for the better in 4 years. We'll never get one of those though. Story 30 Demand an audit of the military budget and government contracts for waste, fraud and abuse. Then sign a bunch of executive orders undoing everything Trump did via executive order. ID Then have IC stop doing raids and look into shutting them down permanently. Story 31 ID Remove the entire Supreme Court and replace it with 50 new judges from each state with a 4-year term limit. Oh, and put Trump and his MAGA turd family behind bars. Story 32 Top 3 In any order term limits and age limits for all elected positions and also Supreme Court not elected ranked choice voting. Strong support for voting turnout. I don't want to make it mandatory, like it is in many countries, but make it hard to make excuses why you didn't, but maybe a tax credit coupon you get for placing your ballot. I think that's legal, and then if I'm not killed off by special interests gerrymandering repair by basically assigning convex districts using some automated method based on census data. Story 33 Rescind all of the executive orders issued during the Trump presidency. Request the resignation of the cabinet, pull in top lawmakers and experts in fields of diplomacy, economics, etc. to get the house in order. Story 34 Naps for everyone. Figure a 40-hour workweek pay at minimum wage and that's what you get while on welfare, no matter how many kids you have. Expand equity programs that help everyone succeed at life. CEOs will not be allowed to make more than 10 of their lowest paid employees. Elon Musk has to be in the rockets when they get tested. Abortions are legal again. Story 35 Work on increasing people's understanding of government, so they are actually aware of what the president can do. So many people here seem to think the president can just snap their fingers and decree something. Story 36 Well, as a head of state with limited powers, seeking advice on the limits of my power and how best to apply them to be most effective, I certainly wouldn't be doing anything illegal that would get reversed by the courts in like a week. I mean, what kind of idiot would do that? Story 37 Yeah, this is going to be unpopular, but the school year should not be 9 months. Kids should be in school all 12 months. Get rid of summer break. Second thing will be even more unpopular. I would make kids born here pass the same civic citizenship test that immigrants have to pass to before they are able to vote. Then make that test harder in general. Story 38 I, as President of the United States, sign this executive order to delegate my power back to Congress so that I may enforce the law and not create the laws. This will be the final presidential executive order that can be written. This order cannot be repealed unless 23 of both houses of Congress vote to repeal this order. Is this legal? I don't know, but if not, I'd like to see people fight me on giving away my power back to Congress. Oh. Story 39 Make gerrymandering illegal and make election day a federal holiday. And do those things in a way that make next to impossible to change back. After that, impose term limits for all elected positions. It doesn't have to be 2 terms, but absolutely no one should hold the same office for decades. Impose age limits for all elected positions. I'm open to suggestions on what the age should be, but there definitely shouldn't be any octogenarians in office. Strict spending limits on all political campaigns. Supreme Court federal judge is no longer a lifetime appointment. Either make a mandatory retirement age or make it a set term, maybe 20 years. Story 40 Fire the entire cabinet and their deputies. Assign career workers as interims until the new cabinet is approved. Take steps to reinstate the federal workers unjustly terminated by Doge. Dismantle Doge. Reinstate the boards and committees that are supposed to be nonpartisan, like the Vaccine Advisory Board and the Kennedy Center Board. Reinstate USAID. Rescind all Trump executive orders from both tenures. Create an executive order that rescinds the Trump tariffs as soon as the other country rescinds their retaliatory tariffs. Push Congress to create legislation that makes it more difficult for future presidents to dismantle government agencies without their approval. Figure out a way to make the DOJ more independent, so that they can't defy judicial and congressional orders to take members of the executive branch into custody. Appoint a ton of immigration judges, and expand the INS to be able to process the backlog of immigrants more expeditiously. Story 41 Executive Order Number 1. Confiscate all assets of Trump and Musk pending investigation on foreign affiliations. Number 2. Condemn with no half measures Russia invasion of Ukraine, demanding that Russia withdraws immediately from Ukraine borders. Number 3. In between just sending a couple of small nukes to Iran and destroy that viper's nest forever or withdraw any support to Israel. Number 4, all software that is no longer supported by the original company need to remove any DRM and make iflegit necessary to operate such software. The server code publicly available and functional the code must comply and run. Number 5, no government facility can use proprietary software including hardware that requires proprietary software to run, which includes firmwares, binary blobs or hardware drivers, unless it's a government-developed classified software solution not commissioned to a third party. The code must be available to the public. Military equipment can be assented if they can make the Congress vote on the absolute strict necessity for such code to be classified, defined by not having any off-the-shelf, commercially available component or part, which should always be the first choice over developing the software in-house. Example, F-35 avionics and computer software should be classified. Communication apparatus like switch, routers, anything that can have AL commercial application cannot be classified. Story 42. This isn't the feel-good or simple answer most people want. But here goes. Most of the things people are talking about in this thread are going to be impossible without enough support to ram it through. What the president does have is what Theodore Roosevelt called a bully pulpit. They have the opportunity to convey any message they want to the masses. It's not endless, and there will always be a price, but they can get in front of a microphone and be heard. No matter what cause they choose to champion, there will be criticism, and some form of backlash. As divided as we are politically right now, people have trouble agreeing on the color of an orange. Having said that, if a sitting president announced their intention to limit corruption in Congress by placing a ban on investing in individual stocks, and or receiving any sort of payment other than their government salary until at least one election cycle after they leave office, I think a significant portion of the public would respond favorably. Call for Congresscritters to comply voluntarily, and it would only take a few to do it before it started putting pressure on the others. They may not get it to pass, but it would bring a lot of unwelcome attention on the ones who don't. That is one very oversimplified example in a long list of things that need to be fixed. Story 43. Here are a few of my ideas. ID. Make Election Day a holiday. ID. Do my best to get rid of the Electoral College. Set term limits on the Supreme Court and Congress. Do my best to make sure the previous administration and their cabinet have consequences for all the shady illegal stuff they've been doing. Every member of Congress has to vote on every bill, no more abstaining. If they miss a certain number of votes, a special election will be held to replace them. They shouldn't be allowed to keep their jobs if they're not doing one of the biggest parts of their job. It should also be required that each member of Congress reads the whole bill before they vote. Single-issue bills. Enough with the sneaking in other issues. Healthcare for all, paid maternity-paternity leave. Student loan interest will have a maximum percentage allowed, and after a number of years, 20, of paying, the rest will be forgiven. No more tax cuts for the rich. It's time to trickle up. Minimum wage increased to a more reasonable livable amount. Story 44. First thing. Eliminate all military aid for Israel that involved anything remotely resembling an offensive weapon. I would not be so quick to stop with defense-only support, but giving those maniacs killing machines would stop on day one. ID. Also implement a full blockade of anything going into Israel without full U.S. oversight and approval, and provide immediate and massive humanitarian relief in Gaza West Bank. On day 2, we'd start looking at full disarmament. It would be slow and careful, but they need a very serious reality check. I might rethink things if they elect an actual government like an actual democracy does and oust their dictator. I know my view will not be popular, but yeah, things would change on day 1. Story 45. It's illegal for members of Congress or Senate members to own or buy stock. No getting rich while knowing when to buy and sell. Also for senators, your salary is dependent on how well your state is doing. Story 46. Try to restructure the Constitution to fit our modern problems. We got too many in a few bills here and they wouldn't cut it. A systemic revolution of some sort, or just step down because. Story 47. Universal healthcare including mental health and lower housing prices with limits for renting, and a maximum yearly salary of $99 million with anything over being taxed at 75. Story 48. New constitutional amendment reinforcing the Second Amendment and writing it so clearly that no authoritarian fascist dictator can try to take away guns again. Keep the population armed and the government scared. Story 49. First thing I'd do is get assassinated by my own government or citizens because of writing an executive order to destroy the housing crisis by writing the aughts policy, meaning any all housing areas locations interiors that are still carrying designs amenities from the 90s. Then said apt complexes. Houses will be forced to charge the rent prices from said era. No excuses or exceptions. All low-cost housing areas will be forced to be low-cost, meaning if you're going to claim it, then your development is not allowed to charge over $1,434 BD34 BA monthly. Your lowest will be no higher than early mid-aughts pricing. All APTs being built to scam renters looking at you NYC bastardizing minimalist-styled homes will be forced to either tear down to properly charge by actually building sizable APTs, or be forced to price their minimalistic-styled housing by less than $1,100 a month. This will also mean that if your apt has hazardous properties in a location, molding, faulty wiring, non-functioning appliances, then your rent will be lowered for a full contact year if not fixed within 6 months. Permanently lowered by an extra 250, if shown records proof that it hasn't been fixed in years, anyone opposing will pretty much expose themselves as the ones who are violently profiting off of scalping renters. Story 50. Figure out a better system. The whole thing is a cluster. You elect some guy who runs on being better than the last guy and doing something different, so he gets elected and he stops some of the previous guy's projects and starts some of his own, but now 4 years is up and there's a new guy. This new guy is running on being better than the last guy and doing something different than the previous guy, because his projects actually sucked and his will be better. So he gets elected and he stops some of the guy's previous projects and starts some of his own, but wait, 4 years is up, time to bring in another round of changes and new big projects. What about all those other projects from the past? Screw them. We'll only deal with them when they're on fire. Seriously, what in the kind of system is that? The longer it goes on, the more redundancies you have, the more departments you create or destroy, make them all meaningless. I don't have a better solution, but I don't think people should be sucking the founding fathers' cocks so much. Story 51-1, order the arrest of all mega officials. Since the Supreme Court took all boundaries and guidelines off a president's power last year, ID absolutely used that power to rescind every last change that Trump and his cronies have ever done, from Citizens United, to Roe, to everything else, everything. 3. Appoint new Supreme Court justices with actual credibility, ethics and morals, and expand the court to 13 seats, 1 for each district. 4. Make Puerto Rico and DC states. 5. Fix the God VA that Eve been fighting to get 100 disability for the last 15 years, and for everyone else that deserves it, and who deserve it even more and will in the future. Then I would abdicate power and disappear. Story 52. Ban CNN, MSDNC, and any other left-wing slanted news people and reporters. Get a general understanding of how our people's lives and work are going. By our people I mean the American people, specifically government employees. Ensure their job is not redundant and that it's not a waste of our hard-earned money, the people's money. Oh, that's what our best POTUS ever did. Must know what he's talking about. Story 53. Transparency. Audit the Pentagon, track the donations, eliminate the corporate overreach, and hire back every single person Musk fired. Then ID go for universal healthcare, paid leave for parents, raise the minimum wage to what it should be, 30 an hour, end poverty, house the homeless, the things our government should have been doing. Story 54. ID follow through on as many of Trump's broken promises as possible, plus a few of my own. 1. Release the Epstein client list, unredacted. 2. Full disclosure on JFK, RFK, MLK and UFOs. 3. Audit Fort Knox, live with reporters present. 4. Cut all funding to Israel and Ukraine until the war's end. 5. Audit the Fed. 6. Implement a 2-year federal hiring freeze, reducing costs by attrition rather than firing. 7. Create a bipartisan committee to study and propose solutions to the top 5 most important issues to American citizens: homelessness, healthcare costs, inflation, national debt, etc. 8. Implement an unhackable national voting system with blockchain technology, AI fraud detection, instantaneous vote certification and results reported back through a universal app dashboard. 9. Rewrite and reinforce the War Powers Act with a provision that requires the criminal prosecution of the POTUS and his relevant staff in the event of trying to bypass Congress and starting a war. Story 55. Call a constitutional Congress with the following authority. G points. Create term limits and age limits. Every member of Congress and the President must pass a basic civics exam to certify their competence to do their jobs. Eliminate PACs. Elections to be run under strict government control. Each candidate has limited funds, forcing them to put forth platforms only to the public and nothing else. Platforms should be clearly and cleanly stated on public, government-regulated websites and libraries. Gerrymandering is also eliminated. There is too much waste and effort spent on trying to crowd out opposing party votes. National elections require a national holiday so everyone can vote. Elections should be electronic, with simple electronic verification. We do millions in electronic transactions every day. Voting can be done the same way. News agencies should be held liable for spreading false information and propaganda. Story 56. Lots of people who don't know what the president's powers are. This is why our democracy is falling apart. People don't know how it actually works. Hey race, what ID do on day 1 that I could actually accomplish? Revoke all executive orders issued on or after January 20, 2025. Return control of all National Guard units to the states. Order the military to cease operations for domestic law enforcement, if any kind, including but not limited to immigration. Order IC to begin the process of separating any agent who was involved with enforcement activities in the last 6 months who wore a mask or was involved in detaining people because of their political views with list. Story 57. I have a 5-point plan to fix politics. 1. Term limits on Congress and age restrictions. 2. Voting day is a national 3-day holiday and voting is mandatory for any IRS tax breaks. 3. Congress Senate is paid 5x minimum wage. If they want to vote themselves a raise, everyone gets one. 4. All public elections use public money only. No private money is allowed in politics. 5. Any public elected official that lies about, during, or in the course of their duties is immediately removed from office and a special election will take place to elect their replacement. Story 58. End lobbying. Apologize for all those leaders who totally ignored the Constitution. End riders and bills. Bills must be singular subject only. work to restore public trust, ban trading for political offices. Story 59 retroactively rescind every single policy, order, appointment, or other decision of the 2024 administration. My second order of business would be sending the whole 2024 administration straight to a Guatemalan prison and nationalizing their assets to establish a reparations fund. Then ID expand the Supreme Court to 13, the current number of circuit courts, which was the basis for the number of seats when there were 9, appoint a special investigator to charge the felons who lied to Congress about supporting Roe v. Wade during their appointment process, and appoint worthy people to the court. Then ID ban corporate donations to politicians and make PACs illegal. Then ID mandate that all federal politicians must put all their assets into double-blind trusts upon taking office. Then ID establish a nonpartisan body to overhaul the planning of electoral boundaries, removing such decisions from the hands of those who have gerrymandered their way into guaranteed victory, no matter how badly they over the voters. The body would operate at arm's length from the federal government, answerable only to a Senate committee. What do you mean? I haven't given this much thought at all. Story 61st thing, I got a list and could keep going a while. 1. End the war on drugs. It doesn't work. Stop wasting taxpayer dollars. Stop using it to fund police forces and make mini-military police departments. Go more towards addiction assistance and treatment. 2. Overhaul the courts and prison system. No more for-profit prisons. Get rid of pointless laws. 3 strikes, drug offenses. Make people who kill children or abuse them take the death penalty with only one chance at appeal. Violent crime resulting in serious injury or death is minimum 25-year sentence. No parole, rape death penalty, 1 chance at appeal. Caught stealing and you're a legal adult, we cut off a hand, enough is enough already. 3. Overhaul immigration, end IC raids, give people who can prove legal employment with no criminal history, established residency and agreeing to pay taxes a chance to stay. Also a way to report companies or employers who are trying to keep them undocumented, threatened and avoiding taxes to be reported for exploitation and legally go after them. 4. Ban politicians from being able to take corporate kickbacks and do any stock trading. 5. End for-profit insurance carriers. 6. End predatory student lending and put way more restrictions on how much interest can be charged on the loans. Make it so people can actually pay them back reasonably and within 10 years. 7. End immunity for police. If they are caught breaking laws or targeting citizens, they go to jail, terminated if necessary, lose their pension. Cannot change jobs and just pick up where they left off. You're off the force permanently. Also make a national standard for how healthy they have to be, more training on hand-to-hand combat, de-escalation, legal rights of citizens, regular mental health evaluations. If you are caught drinking, driving, using drugs on the job or abusing a spouse or child, you are off the force permanently. 8. End income tax on anyone making under $100 a year, maybe like $250K for a couple with kids. Stop stealing from people struggling. Clearly they are already most of that money away on stuff we do not approve of. 9. Make businesses pay their fair share of taxes. No tax avoidance or using laws or loopholes to dodge them. 10. Give people the option of opting out of Social Security. By all accounts it's generally a scam and the government has been horrible about managing it. If I want to have a financial advisor who can help me manage my money, I should be able to tell the government, no thank you, I will handle my own retirement. 11. Make stand your grown a national law. If you're dangerous and attempt to hurt me or come onto my property or in my home, I should be able to defend myself without legal concern. 12. Make protesting while blocking traffic illegal. If you're standing in the road and you get run over, that's your fault, not the driver's. 13. End child support, end alimony. Each parent gets $5,050 custody rights except in cases of abuse or a parent surrenders their rights. Each parent covers general care costs while they have the child. Make courts actually analyze the costs of things like schooling insurance and come up with a fair way to cover them. Food, clothes, entertainment, etc. are not part of that. Get rid of gold digger mom types or using the courts as weapons against dads. No more based on how much money they make for support or alimony. You're both adults. Get jobs and grow up. 14. National database that can flag people with severe mental health issues or on certain drugs for things like depression or bipolar psychosis, etc. 15. Stricter gun laws, especially when it comes to mental health evaluations. If you're on meds or have any history of mental health problems, you cannot own guns. 16. Get rid of military-style weapons for recreational use. No high-capacity magazines, no machine guns, you cannot have them. If you enjoy them, go join the military. Sorry folks, pistols, bolt-action or lever-action rifles and shotguns only. We have way too many mass shootings and nothing is being done about it. 17. Make HOAs illegal. Or at least vastly limit their power or ability to fine and seize people's property. Put all the current admin to death row with no option for pardon plus some. Story 61, very good ones already. As a European, hey race, a couple things I would start today. Ensure all law enforcement is appropriately identified when on duty, unless when running a sanctioned undercover mission. Get legal procedures stated against everyone who has been doing differently. Restate publicly that states' rights are important. Check in with governors and ensure they decide if they want to keep federal forces there or if they wish them withdrawn. Get a procedure started today to ensure everyone in the country has a voter ID within a year. Easy process. No frills. It's crazy to us Europeans this is not already the case. Let's get trucks going around the entire country equipped to get people IDs. and a database to ensure only one vote per person. No more electronic voting machines. Everyone has a paper ballot. Counting will, but such is life. You can't as easily mess with results as with a results database. Legal procedures started against everyone who took unconstitutional action while in office. Turn in all the documents that were promised and not delivered, or delivered with hardly anything unredacted. Any redaction left over would only cover either state secrets that compromise national security or cases that are ongoing. If that throws a few celebrities under the bus, tough luck. Story 62: Money in politics, revolving door, and any form of enrichment or gain from office, apart from salary, gone. Citizens United, gone. Age limits on all offices. Story 63: First ID rub one out in the Lincoln bedroom. Then ID nullify all of Trump's orders and have Elon Musk deported to the wrong part of Africa. Then ID smoke a bowl. I probably shouldn't be president.